We're going to start this workshop entitled Garifuna Rhythms. We'll start with Professor Daniel Kaufman of the Linguistics Department from Queens College and giving us the introduction.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to introduce our two performers today for this excellent workshop, the first of its kind at Ella here. And I've been working with Alex Colon for some years on several projects, including a very long and ongoing project on the transcription of songs, Arumahani and Abemahani songs, and interviews as well. So we've been working on that, and it's a pleasure to now bring some of the music right here to you, so you can actually learn some of the rhythms yourself and the meanings of the rhythms, the context, the background, and all of that. So with that, I think I'll let Alex introduce.
Of course, we have Myles Petillo, who's going to be my assistant here today. And of course, Myles has been working with me also in the after-school program in Brooklyn. And he's also a prolific, drummer himself, and aspiring actor and hardworking gentleman. And Myles going to say something about himself, Mike?
I'm more than honored to be here. It is a blessing, and to our ancestors, it is an honor that we get to share this with you and the audience that are watching. And something like this, and this platform like this, being on video means a lot to the Garifuna heritage and Garifuna culture, so that we may be able to pass this on intergenerationally and with you, the viewers. So I thank you, and I thank you, Alex, and I thank you, Daniel, for having me be here today.
My pleasure.
Without further ado, we go to
Yes.
To the presentation. We'll begin the presentation. Of course, the Garifuna Rhythms workshop. And next slide, please. Okay, we begin by starting. Who are the Garifuna people? The Garifuna are an indigenous people of Central America, of African ancestry, and native inhabitants of the Caribbean, namely the Kalinago, the Arawa or Lokono people, like Lokono, which they refer themselves to, Lokono of Lokono heritage. Garifuna were exiled from the island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines in the Caribbean after a long war with the British that resulted in the death of our leader and paramount chief, Joseph Chatoyer. Garifuna language and culture is considered endangered. UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Scientific, Cultural Organization, has proclaimed that the indigenous language and culture of the Garifuna is an oral and intangible heritage of humanity. The language was prohibited to be spoken in St. Vincent and the Grenadines after the war had ended between the British and the Garifuna. Preservation of the language and traditional Garifuna rhythm as an art form, and that's what we are about here today. In order to prevent the language and language of the traditional Garifuna drums as an art form from being extinct, I have taken on the task of maintaining and preserving the language and culture in order to pass it on to the next generation. So today we're going to be introducing traditional Garifuna drums, which consists of two main drums, the primero, as it's called in Garifuna, and the segunda drums, which we have displayed here, and we'll see shortly in the slide. Primero being the first drum that accents the beat and follows the dances or the dance movements. And the segunda is the heartbeat or that maintains the tempo of the rhythm. And we have to the left is the primero drum, and to the right would be the segunda drum, which is the bass drum. It's the heartbeat or the tempo, the bass drum. The four main purposes of the drum would be namely communication, celebration, ceremonial, and stress relief. In communication, we can say that long before telephones, letters, emails, texts, and other forms of communication, drum was the primary source of transmitting information from one place to another. So, for example, when something was about to happen, or when you were going to have some type of to inform in a distant village what's happening, you would summon the drums to play, so that another village would know that something is occurring, and to invite people. So celebrations, drums are used for practically any celebratory occasions, such as Garifuna Settlement Day, which is celebrated on the 19th of November in Belize, and the April 12th in Honduras, and also November 26th in Guatemala. We also have festive occasions as birthdays and weddings, in which the drums are used. Ceremonial drums are used in the tabuyaba, or where we play the bass drum, the hugungu, and in our ancestral house of worship, where we pay homage to our deceased ancestors using drums to evoke their spirit. And in stress relief, we use the drums to diffuse misunderstanding among siblings, and of course, and cultures in life, siblings usually get into arguments and misunderstandings. So rather than taking out or fighting with your brother and your sibling or your relative, you can pick up a drum and play that drum fast and hard and release all those negative energies. And once you get tired and stressed out, you can feel once you finish, you'll be less stressed out and you'll be relieved. And basically utilize the energy for something more positive. Three main traditional music genres would be the punta, paranda, hugungu. Punta is a fast tempo beat which we'll be playing shortly, moving rhythmically to the dance's movements. And the paranda is an up-tempo rhythm played in festive occasions like weddings and birthday celebrations. And we also have the hugungu, which is our traditional rhythm in the Garifuna genre, a slow tempo performed during ceremonies, honoring the ancestors at our sacred house of worship, known as the Buyaba. And it's also played when people die at what's called you're celebrating life and death of your loved ones. And we also have other genres of music, like the gunjay, sambai, piamanadi. So those are other genres, and in the Garifuna discography. So we also have, of course, we can move forward. So we'll demonstrate the rhythm patterns. There's a bass with the drum. The bass drum plays the bass. You can play with your hands. The rhythm pattern starts with the bass, and that's on the bass drum. There's the bass, the technique, followed by the flam, the tone, and also the slap. So we'll demonstrate, myself and Myles, in terms of the bass, right? Right, that's the bass. So as you can see, the bass is the heartbeat. So it starts with the first rhythm, goes, right? And we add the next part, which is keep the tempo. Come in. That would be considered a paranda beat. So we have the flap, which we incorporate another component or element to the rhythm pattern. Start off with hugungu, which is basically. Hugugu. Now followed by Paranda. Thank you very much. And now, yes, we have one more, which is the.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you have a question.
Can you tell us what's the defining feature of the Hugugu and Paranda?
Okay. The defining feature of the Hugugu is basically the tempo. It's the bass rhythm, because it starts with the bass. You need to have the bass, then followed by the accentuations of the Paranda. So with the bass is keeping the tempo. The primero, like we were explaining earlier, comes in to accentuate the beats of the.
So that's Hugugu.
That's Hugugu, correct.
And then Paranda?
Paranda now. Right, most festive up tempo. Of course, then we incorporate the flam, the flap, and the tone to basically give you that extra energy boosting. We have one more rhythm, which was.
And I would also say the Hugugu played in certain instances can really be felt in like the
inner core.
The inner core, yeah. And so sometimes it could get really like slow and heavy too. It could play it really slow and like really heavy, really sentimental
deep
to bring out that emotional aspect of it. So in the Buyaba, that's when it gets like really, really emotional. So it'd be like
yes. So many that spiritual, ancestral energy. Right. So then we have the last one, which is going to be punta, correct? We haven't done punta yet. So punta is more for festive occasions. It's more fast tempo, and as far then the key to that is for the primero drum, the small drum. Primero in Spanish is small first actually, but in Garifuna we spell it with a U, primero, and because then we use the primero drum to accentuate the feet of the dancer as they move along and as they approach the drum also, and express themselves. Basically, it follows the movements of the dancers. And then, of course, the segunda keeps the tempo of the heartbeat, or the tempo of the rhythm of the punta. So we start with the punta. Thank you very much for that. And of course, we're open to questions.
Y'all didn't see it, but Dan was over here dancing.
Good thing they didn't see it.
Moving to the rhythm. Of course, the rhythm is energizing,
Yes.
and uplifting.
So we can open up to questions. I have my own questions, but let's see if anybody else has questions first.
We did about you. Iberi Alex, Iberi Petillo.
While they're formulating questions, I want to ask about the parts of the drum, because we didn't mention that.
Mention that. Oh, and then we also introduced the maracas, which is also a component also. Yes, but then we don't have any maracas player or no.
Wow. I thought you were going to start playing a guitar with your feet. You're doing it all.
Not that talented.
So what are the parts of the drum? And
The parts of the
tell us
drum-
the names in Garifuna too.
The names and the part of the drum consists of the outer shell or the skin. They're usually adorned or made out of deer skin, or for the bass drum, usually the cow skin. And then you have the vines that are used on the sides of the drum to hold the skin together in a firm manner. And then you usually have a wire mesh or guitar string that comes across for percussive sounds. And then you have the ropes and the pegs. These pegs are tuning pegs. So basically, their purpose is to tighten or add pressure to the rims here to bring them to tighten so you can have a good tone and to keep it well tuned. And of course, the drum is hollowed out from a tree, so it's hollowed out of a tree. And once it's hollowed out, it's shaved and placed on to place the skin on it to create what you have, a primero. And the similar is done to the segunda, but the segunda uses a wider tree trunk. And of course, it can be painted like the ones like what we see here. And of course, here the technology has advanced now in that we use metal rims for the drum. But the segunda usually carries the rope rather than.
And this snare is kind of unique to the Garifuna drums, right?
Correct.
Because I never saw that in Puerto Rican drums.
No,
Dominican drums,
it's unique, very unique to the Garifuna drums, the snare, because the snare brings added percussive element that you don't find in other drums.
Gives it like a snap.
Yeah. No, even like when you're playing the snare, the regular snare drums, like Tito Puente plays, are the ones that the timbales. Once you add a snare in it, or the jazz players, when they put that snare, it has a whole different percussive dynamics to the rhythm. Any questions?
Can you guys hear me?
So what are some of the contexts? So you said the paranda is upbeat.
Right, it's
So
up tempo.
you would play that in what kind of context? For dancing?
Yes, the context for the paranda will be more of a festive mode, in celebration, celebratory, birthdays, parties, even when they have like the November 19th celebrations, when they are celebrate the arrival of the Garifuna from St. Vincent or from Honduras to Belize. So they play paranda to enjoy themselves, for the people to enjoy themselves, or if you're having a birthday gathering, or if you're having a christening when a new baby is born, they want to enjoy that moment.
But the hugu, as you said, and Myles said too, it's also used mostly in the dabuyaba.
The buyaba, right? It's also used not only it's for most part it's in the buyaba, which is the house
maybe
of
you should
worship.
explain what is the dabuyaba.
The buyaba is in our language means that it's our house of worship, our ancestral house of worship, where we go and pay homage to our ancestors in a special temple. It's considered a temple, a sacred temple. But it's also used. The hugungu is also played at various centers or at people's homes. Depends on the occasion. For example, in the Honduran community, we have what's called the fedu, and where people gather together to celebrate. And the hugungu is one of the rhythms that's played then. And there's also certain activities that happens in the Garifuna community, where the hugungu starts off the ceremony or the celebration. So it's a celebratory, but it's a solemn celebration. So.
Is there a sharp dividing line between the spiritual rhythms?
Yes, there sure is. For example, there's certain rhythms, and especially the drummer would know, that's only played in the temple to summon spirits of the ancestors. And then there's rhythm that's secular.
Interesting. we should give them a quiz. Let's see.
Yeah, let's
Can
see
they
what-
identify? Give them a rhythm and see if they can identify it.
Okay, let's see who can identify this rhythm. Let's start with.
Any guesses? Going once?
Everybody's
Come
shy.
on.
Everybody's shy.
The prize is one piece of Ereba. I will hand deliver it to you wherever you are. Any guesses? No.
Okay.
I'll take a guess. That
I guess a
was. Uh-oh.
Jeopardy.
That was Huguga?
No.
No, Paranda.
Paranda.
Sorry, that's what I meant.
Paranda.
Oh,
Yes,
man.
Paranda.
I lost a piece of Ereba.
Yeah, that's Paranda.
Okay. All right, now let's do another one. See if we can.
Okay, we'll do.
Now there's only one.
those other-
We've eliminated 1 out of 3, so this
Correct.
should be. Going once, going twice.
Let's see.
Punta.
Punta!
Yes.
Hear me?
Okay.
So now
Can you guys hear me?
This is, so how many? So there's 3 principal rhythms.
There's 3 main rhythms, but there's other genres like the chumba, there's the sambe, there's the gunje.
And each one has a unique rhythm?
Yes, each one has a unique rhythm. And there's the wanaragua, which is the janko,
right.
correct? Which is the masquerade dancers. Of course, so there's the piamanade.
For a donation of $100, I may dance the wanaragua.
Wonderful.
Should we try another rhythm, a new rhythm?
Yes. So we have yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Tell us about that one.
Okay, the one was just a regular the offshoot of the gungu, just slow tempo. So we're just flowing and communicating. That's part of the communication aspect of the drums also, because of course we want to maintain the culture as a linguistic or dying on, so that the culture and the drumming pattern die out. So and the drumming itself is a language. So the bass creates its own languages, and then so it's a call and response. So basically, he plays a certain rhythm, and I accentuate certain beats in response to what he's playing. So it's a call and response. It's a tonal language. And of course, music is universal. Any other questions? Anyone in the audience?
Pablo Blanco has his hand up.
Oh,
Oh,
Pablo.
he had his hand up?
Yes.
Oh, yes, Pablo.
Yes, Pablo.
It's all you. The floor is yours.
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. So loud and clear, Pablo.
Oh, okay, great. Witira Maveyu, Alex Luma Ibiri Petillo, Kunda Tina Nehini Tida Bigibiru.
Right.
So, Daniel, there's a couple of things that you have to realize about the Garifuna culture. I mean, you know, the more research that I conduct into various rhythms, the more there's a link with the continent of Africa. So the punta rhythm, which the what we call bangidi in Honduras is linked to the Bantu community of the continent. So that's where the rhythm is as such, so us to, you know, sort of move our waist. That's what bangidi means when we do the etymology of that word. So the more that we study, I mean, for me, it's been like a really profound self-discovery that I've been on, and just embracing the Garifuna culture and linking it to the continent. You know, we made stops in St. Vincent, but there's like a deeper meaning to the rhythms, you know, that we could see with the other rhythms, with rhythms from the continent. You know, I hear elements of Garifuna music in Malian, Senegalese, Congolese, and Cameroon music as well. So we are the community that has retained all those cultural traits. I mean, be it that, you know, we came over here through the transatlantic slave system. I'm not sure. I mean, that's very questionable at this point. Or if we had come over via the explorers, and then the explorers interacted with the Native American people of the Caribbean. But, you know, I just find it fascinating that as a community, we have retained all this stuff, and now we're just trying to preserve it. So what Alex and Brother Petillo is doing is basically that, you know. And I have a request for Alex as well. There's a song from Dangriga. It got the chorus la 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 la.
Right.
I forgot.
Mama Nugunda
Mama,
Bao.
yes, Mama Nugunda Bao Woody. If you could play that.
Yeah, that's a paranda rhythm. I'm very,
Yes.
very familiar with that, certainly. Yes, that's Mama Nugunda Bao in Garifuna means how happy I am with you. I'm happy I am to see you, or to greet you, or to commune, or to be in a festive mode with you. So, and that's a paranda rhythm, Mama Nugunda Bao, because he's excited and he's so happy to meet this young lady that he hasn't seen in a while. So it goes like this. We can play that rhythm briefly. So I can bring it up.
Gracias, Jaime.
That was Mama Nugunda.
Awesome. What were the lyrics?
Mama Nugunda Bawuri, signifying how happy I am or how glad am I to meet you or to see you, young lady. Boogie yabe, hayawa. You're here finally in our midst. I'm so happy to see you. And every time we meet, we're in a festive mood. So I'm so happy to see you once again.
Very nice.
And then of course he's saying la 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 la.
Expressing his happiness.
Yes, his happiness. Correct.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for that comment, Pablo. Definitely. I think there must be so much work yet to be done between, like tracing the rhythms to Africa, and
Yes.
that's the amazing thing about it.
I can definitely add to that because
Yeah.
I also studied African rhythms and we also studied African instrumentation. I played the djembe. I used to drum at dance classes here in New York. I also studied under the late master drummer Laji Kamara, and also the author of the Yaya Diallo, who's the author of the Healing Drum. I went all the way to Montreal, Canada, where he used to be, and performed and received lessons from him. In terms of the djembe, I played the djembe, the junjun, and some of the rhythms that are incorporated, or of course that I heard. I can basically hear the Garifuna tonality, and for example, when they play, there's a rhythm that's played in Senegal. It's called Menjani, Menjani, and it's played. There's a timbre, and it's played in Mali. And there's also a rhythm called Lamba. Now the rhythm in the Menjani rhythm is an up-tempo rhythm that goes like this. Menjani rhythm. And then there's a Lamba rhythm that goes, and then the bass part to that would be. So those two rhythms inter.
Alex,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Anita Townsend of the National Alliance.
Yes, Miss Anita.
Hi, I just joined in. I would certainly like to thank you and welcome you, and thank Professor Kaufman for hosting you. I would like you to say a few words about the Garifuna people in terms of preserving the language. I know that Professor Kaufman is also connected with the Endangered Language Alliance and the need to preserve the Garifuna culture, the rhythms, the language, and what steps can we take to kind of make sure we continue to pass this on to the younger Garifuna population who may not be as well versed in it as you are, and who certainly may not be versed in the Garifuna language. So what would you suggest for ways we can get some of the young people involved in learning and maintaining this indigenous language?
Yes, thank you once again for Ms. Anita. And for your information, yes, I did mention that briefly in the slide earlier in terms of preserving the language, and that's why we're conducting this workshop, so we can pass it on, so you can show ways of passing it to the new generation. But Myles is a perfect example where me and Mr. James Lovell used to be working with Myles at a younger age, around from teenage, 6, 7 years old, at the after-school program, teaching music theory, teaching them the language also by breaking it down into syllables, the words, and also nursery rhymes, words that they're familiar with. And in terms of counting, like counting from 1 to 10, the various associating the words with the numbers and with the language. So counting is a one, and then you sing counting the sounds to a lullaby. For example, me and Mr. James devised the methodology in terms of the wording, the counting from 1 to 10 in Garifuna. Number 1 would be Abba. Number 2, Biyama. Number 3, Irua. Number 4, Gadr. Number 5, Sengu. Number 6, Sis. Number 7, Sedu. Number 8, Widu. Number 9, Nefu. Number 10, Dis. So so we break that down into syllables, Aba, Biyama, and the children captures it that way. Then we break it down into a lullaby. Aba, Biyama, Uruwa, Kaduru, Sengu, Sisi, Sedu, Widu, Nefu, Disi, Gabahu, Dadi, Tiwa, Lida, Garifuna. So that's one way we teach the children in the language through having fun, through lullabies. And we've also started what's called a Garifuna University Without Walls, where via Zoom presentations, we have children Zoom coming in from Guatemala, from various parts of the United States, here in Brooklyn, Los Angeles, and taking on lessons in the Garifuna language, counting, associating words like basket, basigidi, basketball, balu. So there's various ways of incorporating technology now to learn songs and through songs and poetry and word and item and basically words and songs that'll make it more interesting for the younger generation.
And let me add too, GarifunaNation.org is working hard to preserving the Garifuna culture. The educational arm, which is Garifuna University Without Walls, we have online classes, as Alex had alluded to, via that platform. And you can view those classes at www.gariuww.org. And one of them is the Mr. James Lovell class, in which he teaches Garifuna music.
Garifuna language.
So, yes, the name of the class is Garifuna language using music as a vehicle. And what days are those?
Those classes are Tuesdays, every Tuesdays and Saturdays, 1 hour from 6 o'clock Eastern time, 6 to 7. So Tuesdays and Saturdays, but today I think the class is going to be canceled for today because of family emergency.
Yes, so if anyone wants to learn the Garifuna language, we have other classes.
Do not get involved.
We have classes on that particular platform that revolves the Garifuna culture. So I invite everyone to go to GARIUWW.org.
Thank you, Pablo. Thank you for that information.
You're welcome.
I'll just add, thank you, Anita, for helping to sponsor this program. I can just add, I mean, everybody can do their part from different angles, right? So as Alex was saying, Alex and James have been doing this through music, through nursery rhymes, and also through plays, right? And St. Vincent was a whole theatrical approach to learning the language. Others, like our other friend Milton Gitti in the Bronx, has been holding classes for many years in a kind of more formal setting. The ultimate tool, I think, is really immersion. Until you have a truly immersive situation with children hearing the language and actually kind of being forced to communicate in the language because they can't, speak English or Spanish to get out of it. That's when you really, I think, have a transformational change in the trajectory of the language. And yeah, so I'm hoping that's something that can be eventually done. That's been done around the New York area by other communities through summer camps and things like that. So these are like truly immersive experiences, from morning to evening, all different types of activities in the language. But there has to be really a sense of urgency. I mean, one example that I often tell people about are the Latvians, of all people, because they came to New York or they came to America thinking that their language was going to be wiped out by the Soviet Union. And so they came here thinking that they're the last generation of Latvian speakers. That turned out not to be so dire, but still they came here with that mentality, and they were able to pool together their money and create these summer camps, which really, you had kids growing up in New York who were really speaking the language and had a deep understanding of the culture. But it's, so everybody, I think, has to pitch in their part, and everything helps. And different learners also, latch on to different types of teaching. But the ultimate thing, which I hope, one day can happen, is a really immersive program for children in New York. That would be like a dream.
Yes, I can add to that, Professor Daniel, because there was a proposal or initiative many years ago, and most recently, I think it was by Michael Blake, and along with the Garifuna, was it the Garifuna Coalition, to make the to teach the Garifuna language at the school level, in the elementary, high school, and college level, as part of an elective, just like taking French or Spanish. For those Garifuna learners, our Garifuna children born here in New York, because of course it's been proven that outside of New York has one of the largest Garifuna communities, especially the Bronx. Outside of Bronx, outside of the Honduras, of course, the largest Garifuna community. So it would be that's in terms of policy-wise and as part of the education system, being the Garifuna language being incorporated for children also. Definitely step forward in terms of preserving and maintaining the language.
In addition to that too, Alex and everyone, when I was stepping off the 2 train on 149th and 3rd Avenue, I heard the Garifuna language being spoken openly in the South Bronx by Garifuna entrepreneurs. So I would say there's a resurgence of the language going on here in the South Bronx.
Right.
We could say that it is endangered, but we gotta be careful with that term. I mean, it is, but in what areas? I mean, I don't see it here in the Bronx. It's definitely fighting to stay alive here in the Bronx. And I'm glad to see that the youth are embracing it as well.
Yes, definitely in terms of music and culture, in terms of transmitting and passing on the tradition. That's where us that has the knowledge comes in to assist or to various medium, either the media, social media, or like having workshops or having summer camps comes into play, where Garifuna youth and young children are immersed in, like what Professor Daniel was saying, to bring them into one setting where there can be this total emphasis on the conversational and activities and events that will basically reinforce the Garifuna language and reinforce the knowledge, because that's what Brother James had done in St. Vincent when he went back on many occasions to work with the children in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, teaching them the language, the drumming, and the dance, and singing, and doing doing the play with Chatouillet, about Chatouillet, and they captured it, and they and even singing the translating the anthem, the national anthem of St. Vincent and the Grenadines into Garifuna, and you have these children highly immersed and learning the language that way.
One thing that the National Alliance will be participating in, I hope next year, will be through Vanessa Pastrana, who is our vice president, will be a children's arretto, hopefully at Queen's Farm, in which we will be highlighting Indigenous children all around the nation. And the idea is part of it is to create celebrate a children's Indigenous Day throughout the country, which would embrace the Indigenous children from various tribal groups, the Garifuna, and all the other Indigenous Taino, Indigenous people that are not really recognized. So that would be an opportunity to have some children of Garifuna background be participants in this particular children's program, which hopefully the National Alliance will be doing or sponsoring as part of it at Queen's Farm, perhaps next year. So that's what I brought up the children, because that is a direction in which the organization hopefully will move next year.
Oh, wonderful. That's, I agree, I concur, I agree with you, certainly. And of course, that'll be something, some highlight to look forward to.
We would like Garifuna lullabies, Garifuna nursery rhymes, because it is a children's arretto. And by the retto, our arretto is just it's a part of an Indigenous term, meaning a celebration or gathering. And Vanessa, who is our vice president, will be working with that. So that's why I was asking about the lullaby and nursery rhymes, because that would be very apropos.
Certainly. We can definitely work on that with that, Sanita, and also storytelling if you need to add.
Yes.
Okay, any other following questions? Or
let me just make one last comment on what was said before. So I think another important thing for those who are Garifuna speakers, like Pablo was saying, people are now, maybe we're hearing the language more in the streets, and that's a big thing, because there is this notion that one always has to accommodate to the surrounding society, or the powers that be. But a part of really claiming the language in a diaspora in New York City is to make the city accommodate to you, and instead of always thinking we have to speak English or some other language. And we've been working a bit to really help bring services like interpretation services to New York City in different areas. I mean, Alex also is doing interpretation in the courts and things like that. But in order to get that service, one has to say, hey, even though maybe I speak Spanish or I speak English, I want to communicate in Garifuna
language. Yeah.
So it's like there has to be a process of also letting people know that they should be demanding service in their own language, and not to necessarily just try and accommodate the language
or
that,
acculturate.
Right. Yeah. So I think there's a big imbalance between people who come to New York speaking national languages and kind of assuming that, of course, if I go to the hospital, then I should be able to speak Russian or Spanish or something. And people who speak languages that are unfortunately not official languages of any state yet, and thinking that, oh, well, I can't ever use my language in any official capacity.
Right.
So yeah, there's an important process there. Like the services are starting to appear there now, but people have to demand them.
Correct.
Yeah.
In the hospitals, in the clinics, in the school system.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I've done interpretations for the Board of Education, for parents, but in Spanish. Mm-hmm. But in Garifuna, of course, as part of the New York State court system, I've done interpretation in my language for Garifuna speaking customers, in family court also. So that's how I provide my service. Mm-hmm. That's the service I bring to my people.
Well, I certainly think we should try to bring, as Professor Kaufman is saying, bring it into all services and through the elementary level straight through to the college level, which Professor Kaufman is at the college level. Bring it into the college level. That's the way to work with it. That's part of the immersion that's needed.
Yes, Ms. Anita, I don't know if you heard me earlier, but I did mention that there was a proposal, or actually there was a bill in New York State Senate by Representative, I think it was Michael Blake, for the Garifuna language, along with the Garifuna Coalition, for the Garifuna language to be taught from the elementary level to high school to college. But I don't think it came to fruition or it went any further from there. But there was a proposal to that effect, but it never went beyond that.
Good.
So it needs to be done a follow up, or basically enact on policy or advocate for policy that will establish that.
Yes, I also want to let everyone know that our language is well documented in regards to the literature that we have, and the language itself, the construction of the language, and the sentence structure, the grammar usage. Those books are alive and well within the Garifuna community. Salvador Suazo, before he passed away, left us a very important piece of literature, Conversando in Garifuna, which I believe Professor Kaufman was familiar with. Raymond Breton, his book from 1665, details the Garifuna language. I believe it's called Carib. I think he calls it Carib, but that's actually Garifuna. I looked through that text, and a lot of those words are still used in the Garifuna lexicon now. And that's a book from 1665. That, in addition with Conversando in Garifuna by Salvador Suazo, those are two texts that we could use to preserve the language. As a matter of fact, I have a trip to Honduras, to Tegucigalpa, in which I plan to obtain all of Salvador Suazo's books and bring them back here, and maybe have a conversation with the family, see if we could get those translated into English.
Transcribe.
Yes.
There's also Ruben Reyes, who did the Garifuna dictionary in English, Spanish, and Garifuna.
Yes, Ruben Reyes, Luz Solis, and Roy Cayetano.
Cayetano, please, correct.
Right. So we have a lot of literature at our disposal now. And by the way, Ruben Reyes has a class, I believe it's every Friday or Thursday on Facebook and on Zoom, in which he goes over the grammar usage and the different components of the Garifuna language on Zoom. So that's once an hour every Thursday and Friday, I believe. I have to confer with him. So the resurgence is there.
Yeah, those books you mentioned, especially the historical ones like Raymond Breton and the others, I mean, those are really amazing works, but there's a lot to do with really interpreting them. And I wish more people were looking at those books and trying to mine them for what they have, because, and bringing them back to the community. Because even though now they're all available on, they're out there on the internet, they're easy to download, it does take some serious work to kind of interpret them and then connect them to Garifuna. But you're right, it's really the same language before a few sound changes happen. So like a G in the modern language is a K in that work. So, but it's a beautiful window into how the language was spoken hundreds of years ago. And I hope that there's more effort of actually, bringing that back to the people, because as much as it's out there, I don't know how many people have actually really gotten to look at it. You'd know better than I would. But
yeah, well, that's where the conversation regarding assimilation and acculturation comes in. How do Garifuna people view themselves once they come to a major metropolis such as the Bronx or New York City? And in regards to the Raymond Breton book, I don't think a lot of persons recognize that Raymond Breton is actually a Huguenot.
Mm.
Huguenot was the class of French people that were part of the revolution, where they kind of initiated the revolution in France.
Mhm.
And we in the Lesser Antilles, Caribbean, we interacted with these folks. We used to trade with them,
Mm.
Professor. And one of their generals, Victor Hawes, he was the person that was in charge of colonizing, quote unquote, Guyana and other parts of the Caribbean. And the Garifuna interacted with him in Dominica, St. Lucia, and what have you. We actually got arms from him via St. Lucia through a general called Marine Pedre from St. Lucia that brought in arms into St. Vincent to help us fight the British. So, all these connections is, I visited the Paris National Archives and I saw the text, and the connections are evident. In the Lesser Antilles, it was only the French that were there.
Mm.
And we interacted heavily with them. So much so, there's a rhythm called Gunche, which Alex can show us, that connects these two cultures blending in.
Mhm.
Even the lyrics of the Gunche have some reference to that interaction.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And there's a lot of words, of course, but the words have changed so much that it takes some work to recognize them because they've been so heavily Garifunized, but there's a lot of French vocabulary.
Yes, absolutely. That means that we had a very close interaction with the French planters that were in Dominica, St. Lucia, and eventually St. Vincent.
And St. Vincent, because well, of course, my father speaks 7 languages, and he also relayed to me that there are certain words in French that were closely that are associated with Garifuna. Like for gloves, you would say gant, and gant means gloves in Garifuna. And even in terms of the counting, aba, biama, ura, garde, cinq, and in French is un, deux, trois, quatre, cinq, six, sept, huit, neuf, dix. And we also have 20, is 20. In Garifuna is wing, darandi, 30 in French, right? And, right.
The
Then,
days of the week too.
yeah. Then you said in terms of the time of the day, when you say it's 8:30 in Garifuna, you say la donne 8:30. In French is 8h30.
Yeah.
So you see, and then so you
Although
see
Abba and Biama are
Abba, of course. So you have those similarities of that French connection. Madoulon is, of course, for the sale in French. Madoulon, Madoulon, Madoulon.
Yeah.
So you see the association.
Yeah.
Any closing
Should we
remarks?
should we close out with the Gunche?
Gunche. Of course, we can close out with the Gunche.
dancing to that?
Right. Voulez-vous que vous ayez causé quoi? Bonjour, bonjour. Closing remarks.
Yeah, well, thank you, everybody. And we had a great conversation. I learned a lot. Hopefully others did too.
I learned a lot. I learned a lot. Thank you to all the contributors. Pablo,
Yes,
Anita, thank you. Thank you.
great.
And thank you, Professor Kaufman, for hosting this, for the organization as well as the Endangered Language Alliance. I think there's a lot to be done in terms of working on Indigenous culture and Indigenous languages. So I thank you for hosting.
It's a pleasure and an honor. My part was very small, and I would do anything for Araba. So, but thank you, and we'll post this recording for anybody who wasn't able to make it, and hopefully we can have a second installment someday.
Certainly.
Very good. All right.
All right. Ayo, goodbye.
Yeah.
Aho.